friends, Mary here from Rocky Mountain Gardens. Today we are going to be focusing on annuals that do well in full sun for your containers in areas that you'd like to add some color. Now, if you missed my earlier video, which focused on shade annuals for the shady areas of your garden, I will put a link just right here down below in the description box that you can click on and get access to that video as well. If you have a lot of shady areas, this is a perfect video for you. I wanted to mention briefly some tips about composition in our containers. And there's the old garden adage that when you put a container together, you need 3 types of plants. You need thrillers, fillers, and spillers. Thrillers are the taller plants that give some pizzazz to your composition. And then we have the fillers that sort of fill in the middle part of the container. And lastly, we have spillers that trail over the sides of your pot and add that extra interest. We are going today to talk about plants that fit each of those roles in your containers, and I will have a full list with photos. Let's get started on this and jump right in. Starting with thrillers, I have some excellent plants that do well in the sun, and I do want to mention that the plants we're talking about today need plenty of water because they are in the sun and the soil does dry out. Most of these plants like to stay moist sort of continuously. For example, where I live in Colorado, the air is so dry, there's no humidity, and so I water my containers, especially the sun containers, every single day. And secondly, your plants need to be fed consistently. Many of these are heavy feeders, which means giving them a good water-soluble plant food. And my go-to is called Bloom Booster by Miracle-Gro, which encourages blooms on those flowering plants that we will be talking about. The consistent feeding, which I do every other week, will guarantee you constant blooming of your plants. So let's begin with our thrillers. The first one that I'll talk about is called salvia. Now this is an annual salvia, not to be confused with the perennial salvias that you might see in the store. The annual blue salvias are just a very delicate but very long blooming as well. You know, deadheading them when all the blooms are spent is a good idea. It will keep them, encouraging them to bloom more for you. And so here's a picture of sort of the common blue salvia that you'll find in maybe even in a big box store. Sometimes I need to go to an actual nursery in order to find that plant because it is not quite as easy to find oftentimes. But I want to also add that there is a newer variety of blue salvia. It's actually called black and blue. Here's a photo. Black and blue is great because it really has an unusual coloring on the plant. Black stems, black and bluish, dark blue actually, flowers. And it's a very interesting plant that can add some originality to your container. Now, next, I would love to talk about black-eyed Susan vine. This is a vine that requires a trellis, but if you have a large pot, like you can see in my photo here, I grow this every summer in this large pot, and there's a trellis in the back, as you can see, and this Black-eyed Susan vine just goes to town, climbs up, and produces these beautiful flowers. Here you can see another photo, and it is just delightful and adds a nice thriller to the back of a pot. Number 3 are zonal geraniums. Now, zonal geraniums are annuals as opposed to perennial geraniums that you can plant in the ground and will return each year. Zonal geraniums can't make it through the winter if you have cold, freezing temps in the winter time. Most people just plant them as annuals. They are beautiful. You can see some photos here of them. They do need a deeper pot in order to have space for the roots to really get established. You can pinch back your zonal geraniums by 1/3 of its size, which will really encourage more bushiness and therefore more blooms. It always takes a little courage to pinch back your plants, but in the end it will really add success to your geraniums. Another wonderful thriller are Marguerite daisies. Actually, these pictures I am showing you here are Proven Winners varieties of Marguerite daisies, yellow and white. And especially if you look for Proven Winners, this is a brand that you can find in nurseries, and I think Lowe's is carrying Proven Winners this year. But in any case, it is a company that really focuses on improving the standard plants to make them flower and produce much better than other plants that are just commonly found like at Walmart or wherever. And I highly recommend these daisies to you because they grow tall and they just bloom their little hearts out and add that daisy shape of flower to your container, which adds more interest. Next is the plant that is commonly known as spike. And here's a photo for you as a reminder of what they look like. And you can buy these almost anywhere. They're a very common plant. And oftentimes if you put 2 of them in the center of a pot or towards the back, if the pot is only going to be seen from the front, spike adds that height and very nice interest. Different, spike shaped leaves, and having different shapes of leaves as well as the flowers adds so much to your composition in a container. Now let's move on to the category called fillers, which really fill up the center of your pot. And we'll begin with Sweet Alyssum. Now, Sweet Alyssum comes in a multitude of shades. Here's a couple for you to take a look at in these photos. Sweet Alyssum can get a little bit leggy as the season goes forward. So if you shear it back about 1/3, once all the flowers have been spent and it's not producing anymore, shear it back about 1/3 of the way of its height, and you'll get more growth. It'll sort of rejuvenate your plant. Now, Sweet Alyssum has a beautiful fragrance, and also it is a heavy feeder. So it needs that consistent fertilizing that I talked about earlier. It is self-cleaning, which means you don't have to deadhead it, but again, shearing it back can really help it thrive. Now, verbenas are beautiful fillers. They come in multitude of colors. Here are some photos to give you the idea of what they might look like. My favorites are done by Proven Winners once again, and Proven Winners verbenas are called super benas. They are very floriferous, and one thing that is fantastic about them is that they are self-cleaning. In other words, you don't have to deadhead them. Although they can grow taller for a filler, they can turn into a little bit of a spiller as they drape over the side of your pot, especially if you plant it close to the edge of the pot. I also like a plant called bacopa. Now, bacopa has these small flowers. They're just little darling touches of color. Here are some photos for you. In order to keep bacopa flowering, you need to be sure never to let the plant dry out completely, because that will cause it to stop blooming, and then it will take, if you start giving it water after it has dried out, it will take a couple of weeks for the flowers to return. Therefore, be sure to keep your soil moist if you have chosen to plant bacopas. Now, a very important filler for me in my pots are supertunias that were developed also by proven winners. And these are just amazing plants. They are sterile flowers and do not need to be deadheaded like other petunias, the cheaper ones that you buy. They do cost a little bit more, but you really get a bang for your buck with supertunias. I really focus on purchasing the supertunias that have Vista by the variety name of it. And the reason I do that is because these are the most vigorous growers you can imagine. And they just give this glorious, colorful, continuously blooming plant for your containers. Here's some pictures for you to see some of the colors that they come in. They are heavy feeders also. The more you feed them, the more blooms you will get. Consistently feeding is important. But guys, if you're interested in learning more about how to care for petunias and get the most for your money, I actually created a video on care for petunias over the course of a season. And I'm going to put the link to it down in my description box below as well, because if you really want to have some detailed information about caring for petunias, which are, you know, a ubiquitous summer plant, you find them everywhere. But if you want to get the most from them, be sure to watch that video. I think you'll find it very informative. An old standby is marigolds, and I love marigolds, particularly the lemon yellow ones. But I wanted to share with you some photos here of marigolds. Here's the old regular kind that you can find in every store at this time of year. But then I wanted to show you the marigold palms, which their flowers, as you can see here, look like pom-poms. And they grow taller and really can fill up a space and add a different shape of flower for your container to, you know, as I said, make it more interesting. So take a look for these marigold palms. I think you'll be happy with them in your container. Lastly, a plant also by proven winners called lemon coral sedum. Here's a photo. You can see that it has this beautiful chartreuse color. And oh my gosh, guys, I have planted this in my containers for about 3 years, I think. And it is such a vigorous grower. It can overtake a whole pot, actually, as you can see in this photo. But oh my goodness, that beautiful chartreuse color. And of course, we want to give you a list of excellent spillers that will look beautiful in your pots. So let's start with Calibrachoa. That's a long name, and commonly it can be called million bells or super bells. If you are purchasing the proven winners varieties, they call their particular varieties super bells because they are super bloomers. And you can see some photos here of calibrachoas. They come in a multitude of colors. They sort of look like small petunias, much, much smaller. But they are wonderful trailers because they will grow over the sides of your pot and do well. They like to stay moist, and they are, if you buy the super bells, they are self-cleaning, again, meaning you do not have to deadhead them. And just in case you've never heard that term, deadheading, it means cutting off all the spent blooms, which usually in a plant will encourage more blooming. But when you buy these proven winners varieties, they are sterile plants, meaning they don't put any energy into growing seeds. So therefore, their energy continually goes into blooms, more and more blooms. And so calibrachoa or super bells will give you beautiful color spilling over the sides of your pot. Next, one of my favorites are sweet potato vines. Now, you can buy two inexpensive varieties that I'm showing you here in the photos. One is called Blackie, and it can be found anywhere. It's not quite as expensive as the proven winners varieties, but these are extremely vigorous growers and do so beautifully spilling over your edges of your pot to give that spilling interest. So we have Blackie, which is this dark, almost black colored vine. And then we also have Marguerite, which is a beautiful chartreuse color. Both of them are great. I just want to insert another photo here of an obelisk in one of my large pots, because although sweet potato vine is usually used as a spiller, it can also be used as a filler. If you place an obelisk in your pot, plant the sweet potato vine, within that obelisk, and then when it starts to vine, train it to grow up your obelisk, and oh my goodness, it will be a wonderful thriller in your pot also. So there are actually two ways you can use sweet potato vines. Another interesting spiller is called licorice vine. Now, licorice vine has very fuzzy leaves, and it comes in several different colors, and I'm showing you a couple of examples here. It is very easy to grow, wonderful when you plant it on the edge of your pot. It will spill out and give a different texture to the plants that you've gotten together to put into your container. And that's what we're always looking for, is something different and interesting for your pots. Licorice vine, it's a great choice. Now, another blooming plant that is fantastic, these are called fan flowers. And in the pictures here, you can see that it does come in more than one color. The most commonly found are the purple shades. I've even seen them in pink as well. But fan flowers have this unusual shape. The petals only come out one side of the center, which means that they look like a fan, hence their name. They grow very well in the hot sun and will spill over your pot and are pretty vigorous growers. They come from Australia originally and do just amazingly in your sun-loving areas of your garden. So there we have it, our thrillers, our fillers, and our spillers. Lastly, friends, it is time to make a shopping list. So just as in my previous video where I made a shopping list form for you for shade plants, this time I have made a shopping list for you of sun-loving plants. And these are all annuals, you know, as we talked about in the video, for your containers. And I hope that you can get your shopping list all ready to go and get out there, because even in the colder parts of our country, it is starting to get to be time to plant up those containers. So get your shopping done, gather your plants together with all of your plans, and pop those plants right into the containers, water them up, and watch them grow. This is Mary saying goodbye for now, and may you have a lovely, lovely day.